that shows up as public. There we are. Okay, now we're ready to go. So I am going to hit the record button. There we go. We're all ready.
Do you want me to share my screen now, or?
All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Let me introduce you first, and then we'll go right into your presentation. So I just want to, there are a lot of people that are joining us for the first time. Maybe you've never heard of us before. So I just want to let you know, my name is Judy Kitt. I'm the president of the Foundation for Mind Being Research, FMBR, which was founded 43 years ago in 1980 by scientists and researchers and alternative healers who were interested in the nature of human consciousness. And so for 40 years, we've been a forum really for people to come and talk about their research and talk about their experiences. And really, we hear from scientists and healers and artists and shamans and who are trying to understand the nature of reality and expanding the context within which we see ourselves. That's kind of a passion of mine. We're excited to be joining with like-minded people all over the world now, especially since the pandemic, who are working to move the dominant worldview, the paradigm of our planet, from one of competition and dominance to one of cooperation and synergy and regeneration. So our website is fmbr.org, and all of our presentations can be seen on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is FMBR TV, and you have to search. Once you get to that, you have to search the live button. All of those that's where the live streams will show up. So that's all the technical information. So we're honored to have Reverend Dr. Karen E. Herrick with us. Dr. Herrick completed her master's degree at Rutgers University in social work and her PhD at Union Institute and University with a thesis entitled Naming Spiritual Experiences. How wonderful is that? She's the founder of the Center for Children of Alcoholics and has shared her clinical expertise for 30 years in private practice by lecturing on dysfunctional, addictive homes, dissociation, and grief and loss from a jungian perspective. Her decades of research consist of paranormal experiences that have been widely reported and appear to be fairly common. Dr. Herrick is the author of 3 books. One is called You're Not Finished Yet, which discusses the need for a new type of therapist that goes beyond addiction, people with their spiritual experiences. The second book is Grandma, and one that she'll be referencing this evening called Psychology of the Soul and the Paranormal, based off her decades of research into the paranormal and clinical practice and personal experiences. So, Dr. Herrick, welcome. Thank you for being with us this evening.
I can tell I'm in the right place. I love it. All right, I'm going to share screen now.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
There we go.
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay, should I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, welcome. Thank you so much for coming tonight. And as I said, I really do believe I'm in the right place with the right kind of like-minded people. So I'm looking forward to this. So I'm going to teach you a bit about the vagus nerve, which is the highway of your physical and spiritual bodies. So the news tonight is that you have 2 bodies, and you're going to get to know them by the time we end. And the picture on the left is on the cover of my 3rd book. And it is an illustration that was done by a medium who took this from her control, which is a deceased person on the other side. And she had it drawn. And it shows the vagus nerve coming in at the top of your head. And it goes down around your amygdala, around your neck. And then it goes down by your spinal column into your heart. and then into your stomach. And then these colors are the chakra colors, the invisible chakras of energy that run up and down your spine, along with the vagus nerve. And I believe they're intertwined with that. So we'll go on from here. All right, so mental health. This is what I've been teaching for years, freedom of defect of the mind and intellect. And there's really no health without mental health. But most mental health services and or the medical model don't relate to the role that the body-mind connections have in relation to health. And these body-mind connections cause diseases. So we're going to be talking tonight a lot about the central nervous system, which is an internal communication network, consists of the brain, the spinal cord, and your nerves. Now, Darwin in 1872 talked about the pneumogastric nerve, which is the vagus nerve. And he said that the fundamental purpose of emotions was the purpose of this nerve to initiate movement from your heart, stomach, and brain. And understanding the body's physiology will aid people in calming their fear, worry, and anxiety in their chaotic world. And he was right. And then there was this Otto Lowy discovered that stimulating the vagus nerve in 1921 caused a reduction in heart rate by triggering the release of a substance he coined vagus stuff, which is German vagus substance, and now it's called acetylcholine. Excuse me. All right, so one of the things that Dr. Porges talked about in his book, which we're going to see in a minute, is that as Darwin talked about, it's from the bottom up, the physiology and of the vagus nerve, because your stomach gets triggered from fear, tells your brain danger, danger, and your heart rate goes up. Now, if you have an anatomy book and you're looking up the vagus, you're going to see this, the vagus right there at the neck. That is the only thing that I bought like 4 or 5 of them when I started this, and none of them show an illustration like this of the vagus nerve. So it's much more into your body than right there at the neck. Now here's the book from Stephen Porges, The Polyvagal Theory, and Physiology is the brand of biology dealing with functions and vital processes of living organisms, their parts and organs. And he built on the work of Darwin and the other people that came up, creating this new brain-body science. Polyvagal refers to the many branches of the vagus nerve, which is Darwin's pneumogastric nerve. And polyvagal is copyrighted by Dr. Porges. So there's 3 levels of the vagal system that he talks about, through which symptoms are filtered in the central nervous system. So your first is, most primitive, is frozen, because we all know that fight or flight comes from the amygdala, but most people don't understand that frozen is there too. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. So you have frozen first, then fight or flight, which is instinct and amygdala related. And then the third one that Porges really brings out is socioreceptive, which is the homeostasis in the third level of his theory is all about social conditioning and how your family or others taught you to be or not to be social. And here's the amygdala, which looks like, I don't know, a little reptile or something. The most primitive level is frozen. That's what starts that. And then your second level is fight or flight. So every part of your body has feedback loop to the rest of your body. And on your spinal column is this myelinated shield that is like the rubber on an electrical cord. And brings the sympathetic nervous system messages up and down your spinal column. And if your myelinated shield is not defective in any way, the messages move very quickly. So the vagus nerve tells the brain approximately 80% of what is happening in the body. It regulates your vital organs in the body and interprets voice intonation, which is very important. Provides a bidirectional communication between the brain and the body. And you're going to understand that in about 15 minutes. So knowing about the vagus nerve helps us to understand the mechanism of how trauma, from childhood invades our lives because of our involuntary bodily reactions. So what we can do about those reactions now is what I hope to show you. So we have this famous Freud story where he said that there was this little boy, 3 to 4 years of age, on his father's lap in the living room, and nobody else was home, and the father was sexually abusing him. And the little boy is confused. Where is mommy? How come we're here alone? Mommy's not going to like this. Why is he doing this to me? And so that means frozen. So that little boy, he can't fight or flee. Where's he going? Down the Smiths to live? And I don't think so. So he has to just kind of swallow those feelings, and they go into his unconscious. Now, in this Freud case, another thing happens, though. A cat comes into the room. And so the little boy transfers all these hateful feelings and fear onto the cat. And then he comes into my office or any other therapist's office at 45 and says, you have to help me. I'm afraid of cats. I don't have any memory of a cat hurting me, but I don't like them. And, I'm petrified and I'm 45. I got to get rid of this story. So that's what happens when we freeze. And that's where we have repressed memories in the unconscious. So then what happens is your body becomes immobilized with fear. And we don't use this concept really in therapy that people are immobilized, but they are when you think about it. And socially also, they are immobilized. So vagal tone is the relationship between your brainstem and heart and the fibers of your organs. So it all works together. It's like that song about how one part is connected to the other part. It really is true. And who has PTSD symptoms dependent on low vagal tone? So, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go on also. So people are immobilized because of their unconscious repressed material and because of fears that they had in their childhood. And then some of them have not been taught how to socialize. So they don't even know, like going out and having eye contact with you at a party is really scary to them. So they don't go. Okay, so here's your conscious. Conscious is what we see and hear. The unconscious is, we're not aware of it. All right, and this is kind of the Freudian model. You have a consciousness, an ego, and an unconscious. And so you're in control right now of your consciously, what's going on. And unconscious, you learn without consciousness, right? So that fear of a cat coming into the room. And we also learn through repetition. So those are the 3 ways that we learn things. Now, in the unconscious, all factors of which we are not immediately aware, and Jung believes, and I'm big on Jung, that your unconscious has an intelligence of its own, and a lot more things there than Freud said. Freud said there was repressed memories and sexual repression. That was it. Repressed memories from your childhood. Okay, so Jung says we have habits, policies, beliefs, needs, thoughts, dishonesties, memories, emotions, motives, intentions, and the intelligence is there of the unconscious, so it can send things up, whenever it feels like it. And his unconscious is also the grounding place for spiritual experiences where there is a transpsychic reality. So this on the right, I want you to look on the right, my right, is a illustration of the Jungian unconscious, okay? So in the inside circle, here you have the conscious part of us, which is, if nobody's been to therapy, they say that's only 20%. So that's our thoughts, what we observe, what we evaluate, our mind, our intelligence, our persona, which is our mask. And Jung also believe you have 2 personalities. Personality number 1, the conscious one that you show the world, and then personality number 2, which you show at home. And the ego, until we teach it, says there's nothing down here. We don't want anything to be down there that upsets us, anything repressed. No, we don't want that. So the ego is not the friend of the unconscious until you teach your ego that you do have complexes, which is what these little circles are, that float around in here, are like little islands of inferiority complex and incest complex, a mother complex, a father complex, all those things. Jung named everything that was in the unconscious a complex. And Jung called it the shadow, Freud called it the id. And it's repressed content, positive and negative. So there are lots of positive things down here and possibilities. The anima and the animus. The anima is the female part of the male that's repressed, and the animus is the male part of the female that's repressed. And dreams come from the unconscious, and that's events of the day that the conscious has forgotten, and germinates whatever is planted in the unconscious from the conscious. So you have creativity down here, you have all kinds of possibilities in your unconscious. Now, also in Jung's model, at the bottom of our unconscious, we have our self/soul, which is important because he was the first, he and James talked about having a soul, which wasn't usually, like with Freud, was not brought into psychology at all. Now, there should be an opening here at this bottom, and I apologize that there isn't, because then we have Jung, who said there was a collective unconscious and a collective conscious all around you, okay? So your collective conscious here are your parents, society, friends, books, teachers that affect you, and then you affect them. And then the unconscious down here, collective, he said that what was down here was anything that happened from the beginning of time. And the way that he figured that out was that he, after college, university, became assistant manager at a mental hospital. And it was a block long, and the staff lived on the second floor. The first 90 days, he never left. He was so interested in all the different states of consciousness that he saw. And he had people draw. And these people didn't know how to write. They never read. They'd never been anywhere. And he had one client who drew like Rembrandt, exactly the same thing as Rembrandt. And all these different things that these people showed him that came from their collective unconscious, because it couldn't have come from their conscious life, because they hadn't had that much of a conscious life at all. And also stored down here in the collective are archetypes. So one of the things they first come in is an archetype quiz, so we can see what archetypes are active in their life, because archetypes affect your complexes, and then that material sometimes comes up into your consciousness, usually when you're angry. Now over here, it says, eventually Jung said that two situations where the collective down here becomes active is a crisis in an individual's life with the collapse of hopes and expectations. Now that happened to Jung when Freud kicked him out, because Freud did not believe about what I've just told you about Jung's unconscious. And he was also afraid of the occult, which Jung came from a family of ministers. And also they were spiritualists, some of them, and they believed in spirits. His mother was a psychic, as William James and his wife went to psychics because they had lost a toddler child. So we had James and Jung understanding about the psychic world, and Freud did not. So at times you would get all these memories that from the collective that would activate your collapse of hopes and expectations. Now, then there's also times of great social, political, and religious upheaval where strongly intuitive people become aware of certain situations. So Jung was on a train one time, and he had this dream about blood and gore and people killing everybody, and it was just horrible. And he didn't know what that meant. And so he just put it aside. After his break with Freud, he kept 7 different dream journals. And that's from that came his material. And he developed analytical psychology from his material and material of clients. So this is why the collective is important. So this is your Jungian self. Now, he also believed if you prayed that there would be a God that would answer you, and that God could come around and come up into your unconscious, and then you would have a spiritual experience. So this is why I love Jung. He also believed out here were past lives, and they could come in at any time and activate a complex. Okay, so trauma and loss of function have individual differences. And the easiest way to understand this is with pets, I think. So in Pavlov's study of 1927, there was a flood that disrupted the research. And these dogs were in cages at night, and the water came in, and the dogs were, almost submerged in the water, but not quite. And some of them almost died. And some dogs came out of those cages and performed well, like people, and other dogs did not. And they would have to have like their trainer's jacket to sleep with at night and have something close that could help them. And then other dogs lost all conditioned reflexes and persisted for several weeks. So this is what happens to people in trauma also. Okay, so it's individual how people survive trauma and loss. All right, so this is just a little sale for what I use. This Louise Hay book, Heal Your Body. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she had a very traumatic childhood, and she wrote about this little book that I think came from her grandmother, who was a Christian Scientist. And it has 3 lists on it. It lists the parts of your body and also diseases you could have, and then the psychological reason for that disease, and then an affirmation to say. And Louise believed that criticism, anger, resentment, and guilt cause negative thoughts. And so it's a wonderful book. Number one, if you have bronchitis, you look it up and you find a reason for bronchitis, and then you can say these affirmations and it helps you get better. So I really push this. This book, I think, was published in the early 1980s, 82 or 83. And if you could get it used, that is the best one, because they have changed it as they always lose something when they keep changing these. Okay, now I will take a deep breath every time I feel stressed in a situation. So this is what the vagus nerve is for. And how we activate it and make it feel better is that we breathe into the count of 4. So I want you to do this with me. And then we breathe out 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, as long as you can breathe out. So it's not the usual way we breathe. There's a longer out breath. Okay. And that will calm down your vagus nerve. So we're going to do it again. We breathe into the count of 4 and then out. And breathe into the count of 4. Okay, so they call that the yoga breath, some people, but that really helps calm your vagus nerve down. Okay. Okay, so the mind-body connection, which is what Louise Hay's book talks about, is negative thought breaks down tissue and causes decay in your body. And positive thoughts are creative force, because thoughts are vibrations that give structure to your life. And that is very important. All right, so antisocial and pathological behavior patterns associated with rage and being impulsive, borderline personality disorder, depression, which is hopelessness, anxiety, which is fear of the future, and PTSD, which is negative memory surface. And all these conditions need therapy to repair. All right, so we're talking about the autonomic nervous system. It supports health and growth and restoration, which is your vagus nerve, only when not recruited for defense. Okay, so what does that mean? Now, during COVID, I had some clients on Zoom that were so afraid they wouldn't open the door for the UPS guy. They didn't go anywhere, nowhere. And their family members had to bring in food, and some of their family members would have to change their clothes from the outside in the garage. I put those clothes in the laundry room and then come in with new clothes. So that this person or people are constantly stressed and afraid. So then the vagus nerve never gets to really relax and be there for you in times of crisis. So that's why it's important that, yes, we're all going to have stress. We all have trauma. We all have bad memories. But this fight or flight, when we need to have the vagus have some time when it's calm and when we're not thinking and when we're gardening or we're walking or we're doing exercise, when the mind is relieved from thinking. And so sometimes what people don't realize, I think, in some of this vagus education they're getting, you have to calm this nerve down. And that's what the breathing is about, and in stressful situations. But if you're living a stressful situation 24/7, your vagus is not recovering. And that's not good. Okay. All right. So from the bottom up, connecting medical science with psychology and mental health. So it's the primary nerve that sends messages to the brain about bodily experience, risk, or safety, right? All right. So what does that mean? So this one guy that I knew, he said, I've got a bottom up story for you. So I said, okay. So he says that he, in New Jersey, in the spring, the snow melts. And so people go up to North Jersey and they have different rivers up there that they take canoe trips and down. And then they have, they stop for lunch on the side, picnic lunch and all that. And it's really exciting. So his wife didn't want to go. So he decided he would go. So he gets put in a boat with another marital couple. And so there are people on the banks of these rivers or river where they're saying, now there's a big hole there. Don't go there. And that's that horrible rock that you can't see. And now, but the people, the marital couple that are in charge of working his boat start to argue. And so they're not paying attention to these people on the shore. And he's afraid. And sure enough, he watches the boat and it goes over. And so he goes down to the bottom. And he has this thought, I'm not going to see my wife again. I'm never going to see my wife. This is how it's going to end, the bottom of this river. And then he says, no, it's not. And then he decides that he's going to get all of his physical energy and he's going to push hard. And of course, there's people on the banks waiting for them to come up. And he does come up and he's saved. So if he had gone with that depressed thought of, I'm not going to make it, he would never have brought himself up. And that's what we want people to do, to think rationally, not from the fear that comes from your stomach, right? So it's a good example of a functioning vagal system in panic. He was able to engage top down. So that's what you want to do when you are in panic. And that's what we teach some people, that have anxiety and panic. And you have this nerve and, you can tell people exercise in the morning, go out and walk, and that's fine. But since I've been telling them you have a vagus nerve, and I have this huge chart in my office, and it's important for you to activate that nerve. That's your job. So every day, if you're depressed, they're more depressed in the morning, you get out there with some music and you walk, and it's your job to get your nerve moving. And they do it. They exercise more because they have a nerve, and that's a reason to do it. And then they can engage more from the top down, from thinking. Okay, so some helpful vagus nerve behaviors then. Short breath in with longer out breath. That's what we just did, right? And humming, singing, exercise, yoga, Reiki, dancing, therapy to break down old patterns. But the vibrational level of your body is very important. So like I have guys that come home from work, and on the way home, they hum or they sing on the way home. And this gets their nerves stimulated, and they don't come in. So, they've got to have 50 minutes by themselves to engage with the family. And so that's what I do. I have them do that. And some other things. Voice intonation activates the vagus negatively if the tone is harsh and or gives the vagus a sense of safety if the tone is pleasant, right? So I have a grandson. When he was 5, we were trimming the tree. And before we trimmed the tree, we were writing Christmas cards. Peace, love, and joy, So he takes these 3, and it's been 2 hours, and I'm getting tired, and I'm thinking it's time, for grilled cheese and tomato soup. And he puts these 3 dinosaur ornaments on one branch. And so I said, does it look good? 3 on one branch. So, you could put 2 someplace else. No, Grandma, I like it that way. And so my voice changed because I said, It doesn't look good that way, and it's bringing the branch down, and I'd like you to move it or something like that. And he goes, Grandma, this is the time of peace, love, and joy, and we should not be arguing. So it just shows you that I wasn't arguing, but I was tired. So I said, okay, you're right. So I left them there and I changed them later. So only 10% of communication is actually the spoken word, right? The rest is mostly body language and tone. And that's why your tone is so important in life, and the look on your face. And it really makes people feel safe. And the vagus nerve is the part of you that makes you feel safe. Music of any kind that you like some people, they like their grandparents' music, and they get tapes of that because that's what they heard as kids. And music aids the vagus incredibly. And I also believe that a healthy vagus indicates a healthier intuition, because the intuition comes in on the vagus also. And if you don't have your intuition, you don't have a lot of trust in yourself. And so that's really important. All right, so now we're going to go to the other side, the spiritual body. Okay, so we're doing both sides now tonight: death and afterlife survival. Okay, so take a deep breath. We're going to go into the spiritual body. Now, the most recent research that's been done on a consciousness that survives death is the Bigelow Institute of Consciousness Studies. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but there were 1,300 people who applied for an application. Mr. Bigelow put an ad in or they had a story in the New York Times, and said he was going to give over $1 million for researchers on the paranormal. And they would have to apply, and you had to have at least 5 years of research in that field. And so 1,300 people asked for the application, and 204 submitted their essay by August 20th, 2021. And Jeffrey Mishlove won the first prize, which was $500,000. Now, they had 5 judges. Some of the judges were psychologists, and a person had to have the vote of 3 judges to win. And Mr. Bigelow ended up giving almost $2 million in prize money. So there were 29 winners announced November 1st, 2021. And these were the money that they gave. And you can download any of these essays free at bigelowinstitute.org. And I would suggest, if you're interested, to just go down the line and see what kind of researchers. There's, a few women in there, mostly are men, but it's very good. I've read about 5 or 6 of them, and I want to read all 29. And then I would love to read the 204, because how many of those had really good ideas too? This requested URL winners. What does that mean? I've lost my PowerPoint. Oh, no.
I still see it.
Okay, good. So somehow.
Oh, did you click on the link
Oh, God.
for the Bigelow Institute?
So if I should bring this in again?
Mhm.
No. So wait a minute. Let's go. We're going to go this way. Okay. I can't get out.
Why don't you stop the screen share and start over with go back to it.
Okay. New share, right? Stop share right here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now we will share
Share again.
the voice of reason. Thank you so much.
I hope that works.
It will. All right.
There you are.
Okay. No, I don't want that. Okay, newest evidence for life after so-called death, postmortem survival of human consciousness. So the Bix people say the reason that we have this proof for postmortem survival is we have near-death experiences. We have after-death communication, which are ADCs. We have reincarnation. We have mental mediumship. Mediums receive messages with their mind. We have physical mediumship. Spirit gives medium info through other methods, such as automatic writing, direct voice, levitation, etc. And I found this very interesting from Bix. This person, Jay Utz, studied for the United States government 2 years and then printed a paper that said there was evidence for psychic functioning, that psychic functioning is real. So I thought, oh, that's wonderful. Okay, now we have 3 metaphysical systems that affect our life. And the first one over here is your sensory world, which is the one we're in tonight. And so that's past, present, and future. And that's what we know. Okay. The second one is your clairvoyant reality. And I'm going to read this so that you get it really what the clairvoyant reality is, or unobstructed universe. In this reality, only one person can see what is being experienced. There are things such as, but not limited to, telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition, prayer, contemplation, meditation. Feelings determine your response. Your heart and mind connect. And it is where we experience the now, which is the place where we get to know and connect to our soul. The feelings in this reality are those of calm, peace, serenity, centeredness, and connectedness. Now, Leslie Lupo, I don't know how many people know about her book about a near-death experience. She wrote a book called Every Breath is Precious. And she said when she was upstairs, that's what she calls it, or on the other side, she was in the now. Now, some examples of being in the now are a sense of profound inner peace, overwhelming love, a feeling of unity with the earth and all living beings, complete joy and ecstasy, sensing God's energy or presence, meeting or listening to a spiritual teacher or master, seeing a great spiritual figure like Jesus, Mary, Buddha, seeing angels or spiritual guides, communicating with someone who has died, an experience of near death or life after death. And then the third is a miraculous or unusual event, which is the next level. So that's where miracles happen. Now, I find in the clairvoyant reality, I can go there when I'm like having a reading of my astrology chart, when I go to a psychic or a medium. And I had one time where I'm coming back from a psychic and it wasn't the best, but I'm thinking that could be. And I was happy. And I'm thinking, why are you happy? You don't know that what she said is going to, because she said that's not proved out. Yes, but you're in the now there. I'm telling you, it's wonderful. And I'm sure you all have examples of that who are listening, being in the now. Okay, the psychic chill. Now, this happens when your loved ones are around and they're on the other side. They're deceased, and they try to communicate their thoughts to you. And how they meet and overcome conditions on Earth depends on the individual spirits, their vibrations, and how they focus their energy. And because people say, well, how come mine don't come in? Well, I don't know. They try to make a circuit between them and us. And then the spiritual ear, which is just in back of your mastoid bone, in back of your ears, will get thoughts. And I'll show you in a chart how that happens. When your spiritual guides, your guardian angel, your positive ancestors enter your aura, you may have a sensation of chills. And that's called a psychic chill. And I know clients that have said, they go to their sister's house and their brother-in-law, they feel him there and they can actually smell his aftershave. You know, those kinds of experiences that people have. Okay, so these are our spiritual ancestors, or at least mine, William James and Carl Jung. They believe that we lived having these multiple universes swirling around us, and that there are different realms of experience that need to be studied, they said, in the future. And I think the future is now. All right, now this is Carl Jung, and he believed in mediums, as I said, because his mother was psychic and his grandfather used to sit at lunch with his second wife and talk to his first wife on the other side. And so Jung saw all this. And he was present at an investigation of a medium at a seance. And there was an electrical engineer there, and they measured the degree of ionization, which is your electrical charge, of the atmosphere in the immediate vicinity of the medium. And at one point on the right side of her chest, the ionization was about 60 times higher than the normal people in the room. And so he said this ion situation needs to be studied further, and it's a task for the future. And I think that's what we ought to be doing too. Okay, so that the vagus nerve takes us through life and death. It's a bidirectional system in our physical body where the stomach tells the brain, danger, danger, and the heart rate increases. And it's also a physical tube through which your spiritual body is broken down into atoms, protons, chemicals, etc. And it leaves to take your soul to the other side in your spiritual astral body during an out-of-body near death, or when you so-called die. All right, so we're going to see how that happens. So it's the highway of the spiritual body. And the news is that we have two bodies. Now, many of you might have known that before you came on tonight. I hope you did. So in order to understand postmortem survival of human consciousness, one needs to accept the remote possibility that you can think, act, and exist outside of your physical body. So number two, this is your spiritual body, and it does exist. So you need to tell your ego that you really have one. Our loved ones leave in this spiritual body to go to the other side and become a spirit. And spirits don't talk, but they send us thoughts. Okay, now the law of vibration is important here because it's the principle of constant movement, and the rate of movement is determines the uniquenesses and the expression of the vibration. And the rate of movement is individual, right? Just like those dogs that were recovering. Because of this law, the conscious mind of a person can tune into the subconscious mind and the universal mind to receive spiritual information and psychic information. Now, vibration causes structure. That's the one thing that I learned when I went to Dr. Porges' 5-day workshop. He said, and I thought that's important. I wrote it down. Mediums have a higher vibrational rate of electricity than the rest of us. Oh, okay. And then number 3, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's natural rather than strange to leave your physical body. So please take this quantum jump in thinking. All right, we're going to do that. So people who experience near death, out of body, and other types of spiritual experiences find themselves in their physical body, and then they go into their etheric body. Usually no one has explained to them that they have an etheric body. So that's why death, sometimes they don't really know that they're dead. They think it's a dream. Because I understand that the first level you go to on the other side has buildings and looks just like here. But you do have an etheric body. And I find it mind-boggling that no one has really tried to discover what happens, even though people talk about out of bodies and near death, but they don't say, how do we get there, right? So what does happen when you leave your physical body? And where are we when we're having that experience? Okay, astral, bright, or etheric, subtle, or highly tenuous body is a second non-physical and therefore highly reactive body, not affected by gravity. Very important. So people that say they've been on the other side, they kind of fly above the ground. That is the soul spiritual body of St. Paul in the Bible. The vital life force comes through the breath, is found in the air and in all things. It is you have chemicals in the atom that keep it vibrating. The life force acts as a generator of the atom, converting mechanical energy into electricity. So all this happens to your body when you leave it. Okay, now this is also from my third book. This is the vagus nerve that you saw on the cover, all in color, right? But now what we have are the chakra system, and they are labeled here. Your first one at the base of the spine is your first psychic center. Your second is your spleen area. Your third is your solar plexus, and this is where the soul remains when it's in your physical body. Then you have the psychic heart area, throat area, and you have the third eye up here, and then you leave the top of your head when you die. Now, some people can leave coming out of the whole body, but the usual way is to go up the top of your head. And they say that when we sleep, we leave our body like this also. Okay? So these are human channels of psychic energy that you carry around with you all the time. All right, now the silver cord. Some people that have near-death experiences say there was no silver cord because they didn't see one. Okay, well, you're out there flying around seeing your grandmother or whatever you're doing. I think you're a little busy. So I don't think you're looking for a cord in the back of your neck or coming from your stomach. But I have had mediums tell me about the silver cord, and that's how they get back in and out. And other people also. I had a client once. It was he was leaving. We call this a doorknob issue. And as he left, he said, I leave my body at night and I'm really afraid sometimes I won't get back in. And so they didn't teach this in social work school. So I said, how do you usually get back in? He said, well, I just think about it and I'm back in. And that's how you get back in. So if you ever find yourself out there, I want to be back, and you'll be back. And they say it's like coming into a sausage casing. So we use the silver cord, which I think is intertwined in with the vagus like a rope. And then it goes out the top of our head. And of course, this is the chart where we see the silver cord, except the silver cord is invisible. You have to be clairvoyant to see it. But it's used in near death. And then when you so-called die, this is what you go up, the silver cord and the vagus. All right, so here's the physical process of the soul getting into the physical body. How does that happen? So before conception, your soul's developing in higher levels of existence. When the time is right, the soul projects an extension of itself down into the human body and anchors itself through a spiritual process equivalent to atomic fusion. A fiery umbilical of energy is established called the silver thread, and through this, an extension of self. The birth of a spiritual person has occurred. So nuclear fusion happens in utero in your physical body, and it is a nuclear reaction in which two or more atomic nuclei come very close and then collide at a very high speed and join to form a new type of atomic nucleus. So the astral etheric body wraps itself around the soul. And as I said, the astral etheric spiritual body has many names, resurrection body, all different kinds. That's one of the things that in spirituality we need to put all of these different names and make one at some time. The body is not composed of physical matter, the astral body. It's composed of etheric matter from the other side. It cannot be seen unless you are clairvoyant, and gravity has no effect. Very important, because that's how you go up. Journeys are made independent of the physical brain. Okay, so the physical and spiritual bodies are bound together with many little threads and by two silver cords, one in the solar plexus and one in the brain. The newly dead person has the power to perceive his friends wherever his physical body lies until the silver cord and all subsidiary threads are severed. As a rule, he obtains complete freedom of all cords and threads within an hour or a few hours after death. Now, some say up to 3 days. That takes some people 3 days to separate. And we are extra sensitive, especially to the thoughts of those on Earth, especially in the early days when our minds hover between Earth and the new land. In many cases, you can believe you are in a dream. And Leslie, that book I talked about, Every Breath is Precious, well, she was kicked by horses and all these people came over to try to save her. She knew she was dead, and but she could feel all the thoughts that people were having that were trying to help her, to help save her. So she said the same thing that Krokal said in 1961. All right, so here we go. And here is my theory about how you leave your physical body, going up this chart, up the vagus nerve, right? Okay, so around the ears, they hear this whirring kind of noise, and it sends out an impulse to change rotation of the body. The vibration is getting stronger. This activates the sacrum through the vagus in the middle of our sympathetic and parasympathetic sections of the nervous system as chemicals are being released. The energy pierces the center of one's skull as you're going up, where the medulla oblongata, which is always there, that's this one, this round thing, and the pineal gland open the top chakra. People usually hear a click in the head area when they leave, and they hear a click when they come back in, which results in leaving one's body, expanding their consciousness without a body or near death. And this bodily energy would be like the energy that powers the orgasmic response. So the body just shakes and you leave it. And the magnetic operation depends entirely on the pure effort of the soul using the spiritual etheric body. So I had this picture, and this is what it seemed to me from the people, the four people that I got all that information from on how they left. So become shaken down to a molecular and atomic level. The physical body accelerates vibration, activating the spiritual body to leave. This is an automatic happening, just like you're born. It's an automatic happening to be born. It's the same way to die. Usually out of the top of the head into the etheric clairvoyant universe. Okay, now, I had, all right, let's do this. The magnetic operation depends entirely on the pure effort of the soul using the spiritual etheric body. Vibration causes structure of the vagus nerve, creating a tunnel that people are in when they leave their physical body. So this is the tunnel where they don't see any light till they get to the top of their head. So it's the tunnel of the near-death experience. Okay, now, there's a lady called Sarah K. Grace, and she's written a book called Journey into Grace. She was a 9/11 medium. She worked in California, I think, for 14 years on an ambulance. And she didn't understand that she was psychic. You know, she went through all kinds of trauma about her life, what she saw, the energy and everything. Never knew she was a medium. But this, her mediumship really helped on this 9/11 job. Now, I saw her interviewed, and she mentioned the vagus nerve in spirituality, in the body leaving. And I never have heard that from anybody, right? Even the old-fashioned stuff, they don't mention the vagus as the vagus, but she mentioned it. So I called her up and got a session with her. And so she explained, and I sent her my book, and she explained that in a good death, though, this was somebody dying in their bed, not somebody on the edge of the highway in a car. Explained that in a good death, which was one in which a person died in their bed peacefully, she saw the vagus nerve fold upward, right? And then algorithms were imprinted on the upside of the vagus as it folded upward. So all these kinds of signs and symbols. Now, this to me might explain how personal information from each of us gets placed in the Akashic records that a trance medium like Edgar Casey from Virginia Beach would read when giving a reading to somebody. And he always said, you got it out of our file in the Akashic records, but it came from our body. I also believe that the vagus holds memory of a person's life that each spirit takes with them to the other side. They have no brain on the other side, But when they come into a medium, they'll always say, remember the dress, when you were 5, I bought you that red dress? Well, that's memory, right? And that comes into them when giving readings. That's how they tell us about these different things. So Sarah K. Grace, she's a wonderful person. And I'd read her book, Journey into Grace. Okay, so one has to be clairvoyant. I've said this like 3 or 4 times, to see the vagus nerve silver cord, which could be why some near-death experiencers don't see it connecting the 2 bodies, because they are not clairvoyant at the time of their near-death, or they're busy. And so when leaving the body, this guy who is at Crookall says, I experienced a kind of whirring in my head and a click in the back of the neck. You become rigid when you leave the physical body. And Shank, who she wrote a book that chiropractors use. The energy body in the zone on the ear level sends out an impulse to change rotation so an out-of-body experience can occur. The energy body increases its spin, flies away like a helicopter. And the energy body is also called the astral body, in which gravity has no effect. And then you get an expansion of consciousness. I strove to tell them that the deserted body was nothing. And they all say that. Why are they crying about this body down there? I'm still here. That I possessed a body and stood among them, but there could be no communication between us. A great darkness swooped down on me like a bird shedding the physical body, the tunnel experience, a sense of being freed from the intolerable weight. Instead of seeing the external forms of my friends, the mourners, I read their innermost thoughts. So surrounding, interpenetrating, attached to, and moving with our earth is another world of etheric matter. In the higher, I can't read those words because our pictures are on, higher vibration. And therefore, it's unperceived by our senses unless we were clairvoyant. If you're clairvoyant, you could see the etheric world. But when the soul comes into the body, it clothes itself in physical matter, which vibrates slowly. So this physical earth slows them down and slows us down. And the physical body attaches itself to the etheric body. The etheric body is limited by the physical body because it's at a lower vibration. At death, the etheric body is released from the physical covering and continues functioning quite naturally in the etheric world, where everything is real to it as it was when it was in the physical. So there's a whole nother world up there. And that's why a lot of religions don't teach this. So people are confused and they don't think that they're dead. Now, Jung, and when I showed you that chart where he had the bottom where our self-soul was, he said that down there on the bottom level was a 4th dimensional level where time and space was not physical, it was etheric. So I believe that that is in our unconscious, that we do have this 4th dimensional space that the unconscious helps us move up. We really need to research all of this that I'm talking about, please. Spirits can't talk, they send us thoughts. And when they go to the other side and become a spirit, they do send you thoughts. So when Jung was having this breakdown because of Freud, he was having all these dreams. And he had this guru called Philemon. And so Philemon had kingfisher wings. And it's a beautiful picture if you ever see it in the Red Book. Anyway, so Philemon said he couldn't believe how arrogant Jung was, because he says, you think every thought in your head is yours. And that's not true. We send you thoughts. So you have to figure out which one are yours and which one comes from us. So I think we're a little arrogant. And so I try to think, is that intuition? That's not me then. What is that? And how sometimes they need to send it to me more than one time, right? I was in New York City once after a conference, and we drove down to the village, and we're supposed to have lunch. And so I had, all my nice clothes and my computer and all my jewelry, because I spent 5 days in the city. And I got out of the car and I looked at the car and I had this thought, this car is going to be robbed. So I said to, my friend, no, let's not eat here. Let's go to New Jersey and eat on the water. No, we said we were going to do this. We have a parking space and everything. Yeah, right. So I allowed myself to be convinced. And when we came back, we got in the car and drove to New Jersey. When we opened the trunk, it was completely empty. So all my stuff is gone. And I'm thinking for days, that voice should be louder, right? Well, then I thought, Karen, you should be quieter. We have to be quieter to hear it, the intuition. But we also need a good vagus. Okay, so this is the silver cord. And in etheric dictionaries, it says that it's an ethereal cobweb-like cable, which contains an abundance of intelligence and energy, has the properties of being elastic, and it serves as a person's connecting link to the universe, making both all one unit by connecting the physical and the spiritual body during an astral projection. And I felt the pull of the silver cord only when I went long distances. The cord always seems to be attached to the top or back of my head, about as thick as a covered electrical wire. And people say that they feel the pull to come back into the physical body, but they don't know who pulls it. So here's the silver cord. This is an Egyptian illustration, and it connects the physical body and our etheric double, the exact replica of you. It's electromagnetic, double gives energy like a battery. And when the soul leaves the physical body, it is contained in this etheric body up here, right? Okay. So now Bruce Grayson wrote this wonderful book in 2021 called After. And he states the most conclusive evidence for him came from research that measured oxygen levels in people during medical crises. And that research consistently showed that near-death experiences are associated either with increased oxygen levels or with levels the same as those of non-experiencers. No study has ever shown a decreased level of oxygen during a near death when you leave your body. And so why is that, right? Well, this could be the answer, that the physical body could be giving the near-deathers oxygen when they're in space, which is what the silver cord is supposed to do. And that's an answer in the afterlife, in the after book for that afterlife research. So when we get researchers who hopefully are going to study this, I think this is what they're going to find, that it's keeping the oxygen level smooth or a bit higher while they're in the fourth dimension, proving there is a vagus nerve silver cord intertwined and looking like a rope. So we have Robert Monroe in 1977 wrote this book. A wave comes over my body rhythmically, head to toe. I practiced until the vibration wave would begin instantly on a verbal command. This is what he did his whole life. He left his body and came back in. The body is being shaken down to a molecular or atomic level, and acceleration seems to take place automatically. He would leave his body on Sunday while his wife was at church, and he volunteered to be evaluated psychologically at the Menninger Clinic in Kansas, and was found to be a very sane and accomplished man. But he was having all these experiences, and there wasn't a place like this where he could go. And here he says, I have this from his book. It was a vibration steady and unwavering in frequency, felt like an electric shock. Feeling surged into my head and swept over my body without pain involved. It was a vibration steady and unvarying in frequency. It felt like an electric shock running through my entire body without any pain involved. Frequency seemed somewhat below the 60 cycle pulsation, perhaps one half that rate. His pulse rate was up. He keeps his eyes closed when he goes out of his body in order to hold the vibrational effect. Okay, so how do you have an out-of-body experience? You can have them because you're a well person. And you can be exhausted. You can be very ill. You can be nearly dead. You could have anesthesia, falling, or shock, suffocation, or hypnosis. And then people who do die, the silver cord is cut. It says that in the Bible. It's not cut. It stops vibrating, and it just pulls out. Okay? All right, now, these near-death people, when they go over there and they don't see the silver cord, when they come back here, they could be driving down Broad Street in Red Bank, and they're not breathing. But what I think they're doing is they're breathing through their body like they do when they go up there. And PMH Atwater, she doesn't believe in the silver cord, but she said, you got something about this breathing, she said. Because when they go to the other side, they've triggered their breathing mechanism of the etheric body. And now when they're driving down Broad Street, they're breathing through their etheric body, but they don't know that, right? So they think they're going to die. And so I think that's important for near-deathers to know. This can happen to you. Okay, so here's an illustration I got from Lilydale, New York, which is a place up by Lake Erie where mediums live in the summer. And there's a person who's dead, and here's her spiritual body leaving. And this shows that she's just going up from the physical, which is one way you could do it, but the usual way is to go out the top of the head. And when I saw these illustrations after I had done my Porges class there, I thought, that's the vagus nerve. And these, the men at the museum said, I said, can I take pictures of this? He said, oh, nobody's looked at that for 30 years. So I love these drawings. Now, so here she is, different stages. She's going up to meet all her relatives clothed in biblical times. And so this is how they disconnected. They stopped vibrating. So the vagus and the silver cord go with you when you go the other side. And that's been, well, I can't tell you how many things I've read that shows that to me. But the vibrations stopped, and the physical spiritual bodies are now separated for the first time since birth. Now, when people go the other side, what happens? They get the call. Okay, so what is the call? They have a love connection with the people that are up there. So they can have that when they're not dying and they're going to come back. And like a homing pigeon, you gravitate to your realm in the astral plane. But the people who love you call to you. So that's how you find them. Okay, then you have a life review of this life and or all past lives. And that's how some near-deathers have come back and they believe in past lives because they saw them. So one of the first things that's noticed without mental effort is everything we have done comes before us in a movie. And you spend time watching that. And I seem to be seeing pictures of my life. I viewed it, the life, as if I had no responsibility for it. And that means no feelings of blame or guilt. It was a positive review. But the way I understand it is that you see this life from the effect you had on other people. So I would think it's a little humbling, right? Okay. Now, to have some fun with this, there's a show on CBS on Thursday nights, 8:30. And it's called Ghosts. I don't know how many of you've seen it, but if you haven't seen it, I would suggest you watch it. It's going to start its third season, and it comes from an English show that came from a classic English movie, I'm told. And I've watched some of the English shows, and we must have bought the rights because we've taken exactly some of the stories that they have on English TV, and we've put it on here. And all these people are ghosts. And this lady, she fell down the stairs, went into a coma after she was, she inherited this old house in upstate New York. This is her husband, who now showers in his underwear because he knows there's ghosts everywhere. And these are all the ghosts. So we have a Viking, and they have a caveman in England. This is her aunt, who is from the 1800s. And this lady, she was a hippie, and she was tried to talk to a bear. So that's how she died, American Indian. And we have this classic guy he's gay, and he's from American Revolution. This guy died with his pants off, and that's how they are. Some of the things they do in the show are some of the things that ghosts do. One of the things is they walk through people. And so anyway, just watch it. Everybody has, well, not everybody, most everybody that's a ghost has something they can do. So one of them can talk to Alexa. and she orders food and stuff, has it delivered to the house, a ghost. And this guy here, he can put his finger on the computer long enough to he can write an email eventually. Takes him a whole day. So everybody has some kind of gift that different spirits have when they come back to you. And there's a singer who's not a picture on here. She's a Black singer. She was on the Sheldon show as his math teacher, and she was killed by the mafia. And she can sing when you come in the room, and so you hear her. All the things that have scared people, these ghosts do. Now, this is on my website, KarenEHerrick.com. This is Gail Hasten. She's a medium and a shaman. And she interviewed me, I think. I can't remember. But she told me a story, and I think it's on this podcast, of somebody that she was very close to at one time, and he was dying, and she knew that. And as he died, he came and went through her. And she said it made her feel sick to her stomach. And that's how it's shown on the ghost show too. In fact, when the hippie girl goes through you, you feel like you've just smoked pot. So it's all very interesting, and a lot of it I've read that really happens to people. But Gail's interview is fun and Karen E. Herrick, you can see a lot of stuff on there for free. All right, so we're coming to the end. Occult chemistry shows us another and higher condition, that the gas in which also all substances known can be translated or transmuted to that condition we have given the name of etheric. So this leadbeater guy from 1910, oh, I didn't fill that in. Okay. This is simply another state of matter, ordinary matter reduced to a particular state. So he's telling us that Mr. Leadbeater, he had 100 mediums, all meditate, experienced mediums, and they told him what the other side would look like. So that's where we got some of our information. But he says that we have, they have, the spirits, given the name to this invisible world of the etheric. So I believe we need a new clairvoyant science, and nothing that I've told you tonight, or not much, is going to be settled by science as we know it. We need a clairvoyant science because it's a different reality than our material one. And it is all around us, and we go in and out of it sometimes. And we would lose the fear of death from out-of-body near-death experiences and other spiritual experiences, because people that die and come back, they have a richer appreciation for life, and they have no fear of dying. They've already been there, and they know it's okay. So we need more studies on the potential benefits of mediumship, readings due to the absence of effective treatments for grief. And I have a medium list that I give people names so that they can go to a medium, and it really helps them if they're in chronic grief. In fact, it's about the only thing that really helps them, because it's primarily resolved then, because they have continued spiritual bonds with their loved one. So whether you're born or leaving Earth, it seems like a cord is always involved. So I really like that. But if we're going to have this clairvoyant science, one of the things we need to know, now, Michael Tim, I don't know how many of you know about Michael, but he was, I think, the 5th prize winner in the Bix contest. He got $50,000. So he got a new car out of the deal. And he writes that when we had parapsychology, which should be covering mediumship, in the 1930s, they limited parapsychology to ESP and PK. And the focus was taken away from mediumship because I guess, I listened to an interview with Stanley Krippner last Saturday, and he's 91. And he said that a lot of the parapsychologists didn't go into certain fields because they seemed too weird. Well, if you're going to be weird, let's go all the way, right? And let's look at mediumship, because it really is very interesting. Okay, so these are my books. They're not finished yet. And that's about living in a dysfunctional family. And Grandma, What is a Soul is about my grandson who didn't want me to die. So I told him I was going to come back and be an ancestor, and my soul would watch over him, and he wanted to know what a soul was. And then the psychology of the soul and the paranormal gives you all the illustrations that I've talked about. If anybody wants a copy of this, I send an outline. I don't send my slides, but I send an outline which has all the words that I just talked to you about. Let's see. Okay. Oh, I'm going to start having live chats on Tuesday evenings, I think from 6 to 8. This is like maybe in another month or 6 weeks. And I already have some live chats, part 1, 2, and 3 on the Vegas, which could be a little different or would incorporate a lot of what I've said, but you might want to watch those again. They're like 25 minutes. And if you do go on, please subscribe, because my webmaster tells me I have to have 1,000 people. So I don't know when I'm going to get those, but I'm just going to try that and see if people can come in and ask me questions, because I love answering them. Okay, and so KarenEHerrick.com is the website. And if you want a bibliography of this webinar, I have not made one yet, because I just put 2 together for you guys. But my secretary comes back the 23rd. She's off watching the Northern Lights, so I can have a bibliography for you at the end of August. And life is mainly about soul growth, and I wish you love and peace on your journey, and I hope this has been helpful for you.
Thank you so much for that. Really informative. People are talking about how informative this is. And so if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Or if you want to talk to Karen, you can raise your hand as well. But I have a question for you. Just, I don't know if it's related to anything. You were talking about out-of-body experiences, and you know that they can happen when people are sick or when people are, you know, traumatized or whatever. Have you, I mean, I'm sure people have spontaneous out-of-body experiences that are not due to anything. And the reason I ask is because 20 years ago, when my son was 4, we were in Hawaii, and he was in his car seat, and we were driving, and we stopped at a gas station, and he told me, he said, Mommy, I was flying way up high, and I was on a kite string, and you pulled me back into the car. And I thought, okay, he had this spontaneous out-of-body experience, but you know, he wasn't ill. I think he was napping at it, or maybe he was dreaming it. I don't know, but I thought that was a really interesting thing, because he mentioned this silver cord. I think he even said it was silver.
Right. He did.
Yeah.
I had a guy just recently tell me that he was on the boardwalk in New Jersey one summer with his buddies from Vietnam War. And so he was younger. And he said, we were walking along, and he said, I left my body, and I was above them flying, and I could see everybody from above, and I knew I'd left my body. And he said, I was, you know, I didn't know how to get back in. And but I stayed up there, you know, there's no time. So it's, you know, probably seems like it's shorter or longer than it is. And then he said, eventually I just got back in, and I was so happy. Isn't that amazing?
It is
And he
amazing.
said, and they always say this. I've never told anybody that. But
Right.
they know that I believe in all the weird stuff, so they will tell me, you know.
They know that you're safe. Yeah. So I have a question. At what point in pregnancy does the soul implant itself in a baby? That's from Elizabeth.
You know, Elizabeth, that many people believe different times. Edgar Casey says they come in at right before birth, because a soul doesn't want to come down here for any longer than it has to. Oh, because it's so much nicer flying around up there.
You know, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you mentioned some in your talk about the people who coming back into the body say it feels like it's being shoved into a sausage casing.
Yeah.
I read that a lot about when people who are, you know, they have near-death experiences, and it's blissful and expansive, and then they have to come back into this density, which is a challenge, right?
And low vibration.
Low vibration, yeah.
And you don't see the colors and all that stuff that they see. Carl Jung, he died. He half died and had a vision. He went around the world, though. So when he explains what he saw, it's like the pictures that the astronauts sent us. And when he came back in, he said, "Oh, it was just such a terrible world. He had to live in this body again." I mean, he tried to get out for two more weeks. He was in a hospital, and he told the head nurse, "Don't give me any dinner. I want to try to get back there." And he never could.
Yeah. Somebody mentioned that Pema Chodron's new book is called How We Live is How We Die. She talks about the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and a lot of what you're saying is corroborated in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I know a lot of these teachings about dying go back thousands of years in many cultures.
Yeah, Raymond Moody's, all of his characteristics were in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but he got them from just talking to people.
Nathan asks, he said he's hoping to get information about the healing of the vagus nerve, and I assume this is physical. He said his was damaged during a surgery 1.5 years ago. I don't know, maybe that's a question for a neurologist.
He could email me, because in my first lecture on the vagus nerve, there are transmitters that they put in like a pacemaker, and it stimulates your vagus nerve. I could give him the name of the company, or you could just Google that. They have, those kinds of things that they put in your body to stimulate your vagus. I don't know if that's helpful, but so many doctors don't know about the vagus, but then the ones that do would know about those transmitter type things.
Yeah. Cristiano wants to know if you work with any kind of addiction or just alcoholism in your practice.
Any kind of addiction.
Judith wants to know, if it's so wonderful out there, how come souls keep coming back?
Oh, because this is where we get our life experience, and it develops your soul.
Exactly. This is the classroom, right? This is
it. And so you have to have pain to grow, and that's where you get it here.
Yeah, there are conditions, right, that make for growth.
Yes.
And
then people decide, and especially I would think, using that life review, my oldest daughter is on the other side. She's deceased now about 4 years. And through a medium, she came through and was telling about this movie she saw of her life. And she said she took her time, and which she hadn't taken in this world. She said, "I never took my time. I just thought there'd always be more time." And so she took her time watching this life review. And I would think that, and their spiritual guides or guardian angels up there helping you. Now, I didn't learn this, I didn't learn that, so then I'm going to go back.
I think that's so. Judith is saying, is there no growth out there, only here? I don't think so. I think we're always learning and growing.
They grow on the other side also, but this is the biggest place to grow and the fastest, they say.
I think so. I think I always look at it as spiritual graduate school.
That's right.
to be in body, in the third dimension.
Yes.
They talk about that at the Newton Institute, when they talk about life between lives.
Okay.
And a lot of people have described in via hypnotic regression the process after leaving a body and before you go into your next life. The committees and your soul groups and the discussions you have and the reviews you have, and it's super fascinating.
Yes, it is. I mean, when you think about it, it's the best movie around.
Yeah, right.
Like, it really happens. And so many people are unconscious about it.
Yeah.
So I hope I would love to teach at a university. So I want to teach about Jung, because I don't think he's taught enough where people can afford it, and then use the BICs and just there's so much stuff to teach people.
Yeah.
I would like to do that. That'd be my fun fourth act job.
Yeah, that's wonderful. A great movie to watch, Astral City. Heidi recommends Astral City, available through Amazon.
I think I actually have that on CD.
Do you really?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to write it down. So you have all of Karen's contact information. If you have any questions for her, feel free. I don't see any more questions in the comments. So I am going to take this opportunity to thank you, Dr. Herrick, for being with us. I'm already getting texts saying how wonderful this presentation was, how really informative. And so I want to thank everybody for coming, and wish you all a good evening.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you for having me.
Okay, until next time all.
Okay, bye.